Hey everybody, so we are now going to move on to lesson 3.7, real world problems, algebraic reasoning. So we're doing a lot of actually what we just did in 3.6, so it's going to give you more opportunity to practice. If you want a reference, I'm on page 178. And it says solve real world problems using algebraic reasoning. So after Donovan gives Mabel 6 pairs, she has x plus 6 pairs. If Mabel gives 1/3 of her pairs to Nelson, how many pairs in terms of x does Nelson have? So Mabel gets 6 pairs from Donovan. So this is why the expression is being written as x plus 6, right? We don't know how many pairs Mabel started out with. That's the x. But we know that Donovan gave her 6. So we have x plus 6 pairs. If Mabel gives 1/3 of her pairs to Nelson, how many pairs, so we're how many pairs in terms of x does Nelson have? So we're not asking how many Mabel has left over. It's like how many did Nelson get? So we could tackle that with saying, all right, well, we know that Mabel had x plus 6, right? And she gave him 1/3. So we could do x plus 6 divided by 3. Or you could say, well, I'm going to multiply 1/3 times x plus 6, right? 1/3 represents what she gave Nelson, but we have to multiply it by x plus 6. Or we could say, I know when you give somebody 1/3, it's dividing them into thirds, right? Into 3 parts. So if I just take that x plus 6 and divide it by 3, I'm going to get my answer. But after we've done all this talk in the last lesson, you know this is not simplified. This can be simplified further. So how can this be simplified further? X divided by 3 can be written as x over 3, right? You see that? X over 3. And then we have positive 6 divided by positive 3. Positive divided by a positive is positive. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So we could say that Nelson had x plus 3, x divided by 3 plus 2 pairs. That would be a simplified expression. Or I could go over here and multiply this out and expand it, right? Expand or distribute the 1/3 to x. So 1/3 times x is 1/3 x, right? 1/3 times x is 1/3 x. And over here on the side, if I do 1/3 times 6, well, I'm going to cross simplify. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 6 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. And I get the same answer. Positive times a positive is a positive. And we had 2. So Nelson got 1/3 x plus 2 pairs. Hey everybody, so I am now at the top of page 179. Solve a real-world ratio problem involving algebraic expressions. And you are already ahead of the game because we've been doing those ratio problems that were the exceeds in the last lesson. So there are n apples in a box, but 5 apples are too green to eat. Aaron and Barry share the ripe apples in a ratio of 2 to 3. How many apples did Barry get? So there are n apples, right? 5 are too green to eat. So out of those n, there are 5 that they are not going to be eating. So we're going to want to keep that in our mind about how to set up the core algebraic expression in the parentheses. And then it says Aaron and Barry share the ripe apples. So we're only talking about the apples that they're going to eat. The ripe apples in a ratio of 2 to 3. So this is Aaron and this is Barry. So for Aaron gets 2 apples for every 3 that Barry gets. And we want to think about like the total there because it says how many apples did Barry get? So if I start with just ripe apples, what's going to be the expression for ripe apples, what they can eat? Well, N represented the apples, right? We got that there. 5 are too green to eat. So we're taking those 5 off the table because we know that they didn't eat them. So let's just say, if I said N equals 50, let's just say they started with 50 apples, right? But 5 were too green to eat. We would have to say 50 minus 5, right? Because we take those 5 out that they didn't eat. So that is why N minus 5 represents apples. But we want to know how many apples did Barry get. And what we know is that Aaron got 2 for every 3 that Barry got. So remember we talked about how you set that up as a fraction, right? A ratio is the same as a fraction. Barry gets 3 apples out of how many? This is the part. Well, what is the whole? So the whole is 3 plus 2, right? Because that's the 2 for Aaron plus the 3 for Barry. So the whole is 2 plus 3. So Barry gets 3 for every 5, right? So that makes sense. Barry gets 3/5 of the apples. He gets 3 for every 5. And we can tell Barry gets more apples than Aaron because Barry gets 3 and Aaron gets 2. So you would say, all right, well, I need to multiply 3/5 now because 3/5 is going to tell me that how many Aaron gets out of the apples that they're able to eat. But you know, this is not simplified. We don't leave it this way. This is awesome mathematical thinking. You're totally doing what you need to do, but this is not simplified. I need to distribute my 3/5. So 3/5 times N is 3/5 N, right? 3/5 times N is 3/5 N. Positive 3/5 times negative 5. So positive times a negative is a negative. And on the side here, I need to do 3/5 times 5. We'll cross simplify, and I get 3/1. So my answer would be minus 3. Barry gets 3/5 N minus 3 apples. All right, now you're going to try one, maybe a couple. I'm going to have you try a couple on your own.